So welcome everybody to STEM Faculty Connections panel. I'm happy to be able to share this space with a lot of great faculty members as well as AEC staff and our wonderful AEC students. I'm going to go ahead and briefly introduce our panelists. So we have 6 panelists today here with us. First, we have Dr. Paul Laybourne, who is a professor at the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, as well as the director of the Wolves to Rams program. We have Dr. Julie Moreno, Assistant Professor of Department of Environmental and Radiological Health Sciences. Dr. Christopher Myrick, Professor of Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Conservation Biology. Dr. Mahesh N. Nair, Assistant Professor of Department of Animal Sciences and Meat Sciences. Dr. Deborah Garrity, Professor and Chair, Department of Biology, and Dr. Terry Engel, Professor of Department of Animal Sciences. And today, each of them is going to take about 5 minutes to talk about and touch on these 4 different statements and questions. And each of them, and I'll say briefly what each of them are. So they'll be sharing their experiences of what it's like being a faculty member at CSU, how they're connected on campus, how you can get connected with them and build those relationships, and how to get involved on research on campus. And this is the order of the panelists. They'll each take about 5 minutes to cover these questions and statements, and then we'll invite folks to ask them a few questions before we move on to the next faculty member. And once all of the panelists have shared a little bit about their perspectives and insights on these questions and statements, we'll open it up to questions for all of them until time runs out around 12:55. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Laybourne to start us off.
Right. Thanks, Nicolette, and thanks everybody else for being here. And thanks for having me as part of this panel. I certainly appreciate it. I'm honored to be included with this group. Just to answer your questions, experience as a faculty member at CSU, it can sometimes be stressful, but I'd say on the balance, it's a lot of fun. And mainly because you get to do a lot of different things, and you can actually kind of do it when you want to. You have a lot of freedom to do a lot of different things. And so I've always enjoyed that a lot. I mean, I love doing research. There's nothing like being the first to know something or getting that data. You get this sort of addiction eventually to data. But research is a lot of fun. I do it in gene expression, biochemistry, molecular biology, but more recently in how we teach, particularly science to college students. And that connects well with my teaching, which is another main aspect of being a faculty member. And I get to do advising of students and junior faculty and that sort of thing. Serve on a lot of committees. You can even take leadership positions in administration and whatnot. I've had a chance to do a fair bit of that. I've been around for a long time now, since 1992 at Colorado State University. And that's also allowed me to be involved in a lot of campus activities, groups, anything from the faculty council to key health professions to advising students in my own department and a lot of other departments. The first 4 weeks initiatives, Faculty Institute for Inclusive Excellence. This is a lot of them, and I've had a lot of chance to get involved with them. It's a lot of fun. How students can get connected with me, I think that, or any other faculty member for that, is to sort of reach out and try to make sort of the mentor-mentee relationship. That's kind of, I think, the key to that, and take advantage of it. I feel like as a faculty member that not nearly enough students. And I think maybe students don't always quite understand that. They feel like we're so busy. Yeah, we get busy, but the fun part is working with the students. So uh, it's, reach out to us and, be mindful of our time, but we want to connect with you. We want to be able to mentor you. And actually, I, at least personally, learn a lot from my interactions with students pretty much every day. So I know that I grow from the process as well. So, reach out. That's, I think, the bottom line. Um, how to get involved in research on campus. We can probably talk about that more, but that's a big part of what I've been doing, especially more recently as a faculty member, as part of the Wolves to Rams program. Is a big part of it. What we're doing is trying to connect students with engagement activities. And there's a lot of them there, but it's understandably daunting and confusing to figure out how to make those connections. And part of that is just find a mentor that's their job is just to help you make those connections and take advantage of programs and offices like the Career Center. Uh, Sometimes it's surprising when you have a program that you're advertising how so there's still a large segment of the students that are even the target for my program, which is for students that are transferring from community colleges to CSU. uh, how many of them don't hear about it, And uh, yeah, I guess for students is to be on the lookout for these resources. Take advantage of them. They'll actually save you time, reduce your stress, and actually provide you opportunities for uh, learning about what other resources are out there and for discussing things that are vexing you as a student and how you could, uh, I don't know, find ways of being more successful and connecting with the rest of the CSU community. I don't know. I think that's probably a good start. I think I answered all the questions, or at least started to. But thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Labor. Now I invite folks to ask a few questions to him. You can either ask it verbally or through the chat box.
I have a quick question. Um, so I've wanted to get involved in research recently as a student, especially in like the sciences. Do you think it'd be a good idea to kind of like try to like participate more so in like research symposiums like CERC and Murals, and would that help me get more connected with professors and other types of faculty members who do research in my area of interest?
Yeah, there's a lot of resources on campus. Murals is a great one. There's a office called the Office of Undergraduate Research and Artistry. That is the sole purpose of that office, is to connect students with uh, engagement activities, whatever that might look for, depending on your interests, and also with even financial resources, whatever that might be. That's a great way of going about it. Also talk to uh, faculty and advisors in your department. They can sort of help you figure out what those might be. Sometimes it's just having someone to talk to about it and sort out what it is that you're really looking for. I can talk about other ways of finding them. A good approach to doing that is just thinking about what you might be interested in, searching through different departmental and program websites to find what faculty, what labs are working on, and see which ones would interest you, and then, you know, make a list of about 5 of them and contact them. I would say do it professionally. You know, start with Dr. So-and-so, and I'd say kind of, you know, get your foot in the door, just saying you read some of their papers and you had some questions about some of their research. You know, don't make it like, can I work in your lab? Just go straight to that, you know, and sort of work into that. And a big thing I think that students often are aware of, and understandably, is that we as faculty like to have students, undergraduate students in our lab, but sometimes well, it's almost always kind of full. We take as many as we can, and there's a point where if you take any more, nobody's going to get a good experience. So what that means for the student that's looking for that opportunity is they should look to start that opportunity for, if you're looking like right now, maybe next summer, you know, maybe next fall. Because it takes a certain, you know, people have to graduate to open up spots, is all I'm saying. And so it's not that labs don't want to take you, it maybe they just can't take anymore right now, and you gotta sort of be proactive and work far enough in advance. That answer your question? That help at all?
Yeah, no, that definitely answers my question. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your question.
Awesome. Now I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Moreno to touch on these next questions and statements.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate in this panel. It's definitely something that I'm passionate about is students and undergraduates and getting them into research. So I'm happy to be here and talking to you all. So if I go down the question list, so my experiences at CSU have been really, really great. I actually just started in a new department recently in May, so in ERHS, so Environmental and Radiological Health Sciences. Before this, I was in MIP, which is the microbiology department. So I've stayed in the same college, but moved departments recently. And both departments are great, and it's been really nice because I've been able to collaborate. So people seem really, really excited to do research across different disciplines at CSU, which is really fantastic. I'm part of the Prion Research Center as well as the Aging Center. I do a lot of work with brain aging and neurodegeneration and neurotoxicity. So really just passionate about my research. I love it. I have quite a few students in my lab and undergrads. Again, one of my passions is getting students in research. I started as an undergrad in doing just the basics, washing dishes, making buffers, and I never left. So I just fell in love with it. And I think CSU is one of those places that's really open to students being in the lab, like Dr. Laybourne has talked about. So I'll keep going down the list. So how am I connected on campus? So I do have a research program, but I also do quite a bit of teaching. Right now I'm doing more graduate level teaching in the toxicology program. And in the past I've done graduate level teaching in the microbiology program. However, I do guest lecture kind of on my specialty of neurodegeneration and prion diseases in a lot of classes across colleges and different types of classes for undergraduates. And I really like that. I always meet a couple students in those classes that we keep in touch. And like Dr. Laybourne said, when I have time or places in the lab, they end up coming to the lab. So that's really nice. So one of the things is also to keep in touch with those connections that you've made. So maybe if you've had a professor give a guest lecture and you really enjoyed it, and maybe they don't have room in their lab at that very moment, but keeping in touch is always good. Persistence is good in those type of examples, I would think. I'm on a lot of student committees, so graduate student committees. I'm also part of the DEI committee for CVMBS for strategic planning, so the diversity, equity, inclusion committees. I also am a faculty advisor for the DEI student committee with the Graduate Student Council, so graduate students. I'm also on like research and teaching for my department, kind of strategic planning committees. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff and lots of things with students. So anything I can do with students. In microbiology, I helped kind of lead and start promoting healthy graduate students, because graduate students are kind of in this pocket of probably a really stressful part of their life is going to graduate school. And so really trying to promote them having stress reliefs and breaks and being more healthy, because it is definitely a stressful time of your life going to graduate school. All your friends are out making tons of money, but they at least make a lot more money than a graduate student. And some days are hard when you're trying to just get a Western blot to work. It can feel really, really lonesome sometimes. So it's good to have those kind of support systems. So I'm really passionate about that as well. I think Dr. Laybourne said a lot about talking to faculty. And if I would say anything to people, it would be just go talk to the professors. If I would have done that earlier during my undergraduate career, I probably would have done a lot better in those weed out type classes. Usually, I would say most of the time, about 99% of the time, people like students. That's why we're here, right? If we didn't like them, we probably would have gone into industry or something, or government, like you just wouldn't put yourself in this position, I think. So that would be my biggest thing, is to talk to as many professors as you can, especially if you're interested in their research. Another big resource, I think, is actually like your graduate student TAs. So a lot of times students, my grad students will say, oh, there was this great student in my class. I would really love to mentor them. So a lot of mentoring, I'm real big on like this team mentoring idea. So although I'm the PI, it's really important. My whole career, I've actually mentored undergrads. So as a graduate student, I was mentoring the grad students in the lab. As a grad student, I was mentoring the undergrads in the lab, as well as more junior graduate students. So it's kind of like this more team approach. So even if you come across a graduate student, if you go to research symposiums, I know right now they're all online, which makes everything more difficult. But if you come into contact with a graduate student, like their poster presentation, for example, you could ask them, hey, do you need some help in the lab? And sometimes the graduate students, they should have that direct link to the PIs, to the faculty members. So they're also, and faculty members listen to their grad students, especially if they have someone that they think would be good in the lab. So I think that's kind of a different avenue of getting into research as well, is to talk to the grad students. I think I've gone through most of the questions, so, okay.
Thank you, Dr. Moreno. Now I invite folks to ask her a few questions either through the chat box or verbally.
Dr. Moreno, I know that you work as toxicology faculty. I was wondering if, like, CVMBS, or if you knew of any, researchers who are like, especially like focused on like pharmacology. It's a little bit different, but in the future, like I am interested in like doing like more research in a pharmacology type setting. And I was wondering if there were, like areas related to like pharmacology that were, available in like CVMBS.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think yes. I think if you were to like Google pharmacology and CVMBS, you probably wouldn't get much. But what I would think more to look for is people that are working on therapeutics for certain diseases. So for example, I have one part of my program, my research program, is to look for therapeutics for Alzheimer's disease and prion diseases. And so I do pharmacology. It's just, that's probably not a term I would use. I use more like therapeutics and things like that. But there's quite a few people in the cancer world that are trying to use pharmaceuticals. And technically a pharmaceutical isn't until it gets past the FDA, right? So they're all more like compounds. So people are using compounds to stop certain diseases in cells or mice or even canines, for example, a lot in the CVMBS world.
No, thank you for answering that question. I appreciate it. Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions folks have before I pass it over to Dr. Myrick?
I kind of have a question.
Mhm.
So I've been looking for internships this summer, and I'm looking more towards like aquatic biology. I was wondering if you knew like where I could look for that.
That's a good question. I have two people that have just popped in my head that might know that answer better, that work with water toxicology at least. So I'm thinking Dr. Ramsdell might be a good person to reach out to. Or what you could do is, it might be easier if you emailed me and then I get you in contact with those people. I don't know them. I don't know the aquatic world that well, but I could get you in contact for sure. I can put my email in the chat if you want me to do that. Does that work?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, just email me and I'll get you in contact with those people.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
If I could ask like a follow-up question as well, and I know Fabiola just put this in the chat, but like, you know, I want to ask about like finding like REU programs, research experience for undergrads, because one thing like I've really wanted to do for like a really long time is apply to like REUs, right? I think like they're really exciting, really interesting. But my big question is like, do you know of any like really good programs in like pharmacology, maybe like pharmacology and toxicology specifically, like summer REU programs, things I could like, you know, be on the lookout for this summer?
I'm not sure about the summer and for specifically for pharmacology and toxicology. Dr. Laybourne might know more about for the REU program specifically. But it's a really good question. I should look into that more, Matthew.
No, yeah, I appreciate it. No, thank you.
I found that the easiest way to find summer research programs for undergraduates is it's actually just a Google. Just go on the internet and Google summer undergraduate summer research experiences, and there'll be hundreds of them, and you can then you know, look through those. But there's some clearinghouse websites that you'll find out there. There's one for the main one is NSF RU sites. They have different ones for different, and what might be confusing is it's divided up into different fields or areas. So there's one for biology, the bio RU one, and they'll have it. But I think even on their website they have all of them on there. You just have to decide which one you want. You can look through for where you want to go, specific programs focusing on particular things. But then there's also summer experiences that aren't part of the NSF RU program that can be, a lot of them are in medical schools. And they provide more clinically oriented or clinical research ones, which the NSF funded ones generally will not. But that's may seem oversimplistic, but that's kind of the best way to go about it. You'll probably have more information than you want to start with. You can just sort through them and look through what there are, but there's literally hundreds of programs out there. Right now, it's interesting how some of them are dealing with you know, with the pandemic and whatnot, but we ran ours last summer, and it certainly can be done. You can run the program, and some students can even work in the labs. It depends on how things are going in the lab. And if you have more specifics, you know, I could pull up some links for you if you're interested in whatnot. But that's what I do.
I'm interested in I guess like I have like kind of like a specific interest I wanted to think about with like neurological disorders.
Yeah.
specifically, and kind of like understanding how to develop like, like therapeutics for like neurological disorders, right? Like epilepsy, for example, and to control and manage, those kinds of disorders. That's kind of like my specific interest. And I mean, I see it kind of like an REU as like a valuable experience because it's, it's going to give me that opportunity to really kind of hone in on that specific area. But I guess like my more specific question though is, like, will the RU experience like be diminished or will it change because of the pandemic? I mean, will that RU experience like change a lot for students?
Not sure I quite caught your question. I know it had to do with I think it had to do with the effects of the pandemic.
Yeah. Will like like if I apply to a summer REU for undergraduates, I mean, like, would my experience like change a lot because of the current pandemic happening? Like, would I still be able to like get that research experience that I'd want from a summer REU program?
Well, yes, you can. It'll vary with the lab and what they're actually doing. The students we had in last summer at CSU had a very broad range from, I mean, all of the professional development activities we did online. But it seemed to work pretty well according to the students even. Some of them actually worked in labs at CSU. Some of them were unable to, so they didn't actually do like bench research, but they did literature sort of research projects. Sometimes you can do sort of what you consider a meta study, where and that's just our weird term for meaning you pull together data that's already published and sort of figure out what you can from there. And modeling things, data analysis. Sometimes graduate students and whatnot already have data, so then you get to do the data analysis component. And well, it seemed kind of like, disappointing at the beginning. We were concerned about it being disappointing. It turned out that the students actually got some really valuable experience in the process. Did that address your question, Matthew?
No, yeah, of course. Thank you. I appreciate that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank everyone for all these great questions. It's really good conversation. For this next panelist, we're actually going to do 2 back-to-back just to ensure folks have time and space to share. So Dr. Myrick will share and then Dr. Meyer will share. So I invite Dr. Myrick to take the floor.
Hi, everybody. So I guess you could say that, my experience of being a faculty member here at CSU for now it's been 20 years has really been driven by my experiences as an undergraduate and a graduate student at the UCs. And in both cases, I had really good advisors who were excellent advisors and mentors to grad students and undergrads who were excellent instructors and world-class researchers. So when I got the position here, I essentially said, well, I want to do what they did. I want to be able to provide undergraduates with research opportunities. I want to be a really good mentor to my graduate students. I absolutely love teaching. It's my favorite part of the job. Essentially, I get paid to tell fish stories, which if anyone knows me like Terry does, it gives me great pleasure talking about fish. So I have had a blast for the last 20 years. I'm looking forward to the next 10 or so years where I will continue to essentially get to talk about fish and call it a job. For me, probably the most important things, other than being an excellent instructor, are giving undergrads and graduate students the same sort of opportunities that I had. So whenever I can, I do bring undergraduates into my lab, and then I work closely with my graduate students to try to do our best job, or do the best job possible mentoring the students, either through having them work directly on our research projects. Whenever we can, we try to encourage them to develop their own smaller research projects. And probably 1 out of every 4 or 5 undergraduates get to the point where, you know, with just a little bit of prodding, we get them to actually submit their research projects either as presentations or posters at professional conferences, or occasionally as publications in peer-reviewed journals. Because if someone is interested in research, that's really a good way to sort of set them on a good trajectory. Like I said, I've been here 20 odd years, and I think one of the reasons why I'm still here, other than, you know, again, they're paying me to tell fish stories, is that you have really good students, you know, really good undergrads, really good graduate students. I'm in an amazing department where, you know, contrary to many of the other fish and wildlife departments that I'm familiar with, we're actually all collegial, we get along, and we share similar values with regards to wanting to do really top-notch research, but also stressing that teaching is really, really important to us, as well as working with our students. Let's see. So the next question is the one about how I'm connected and involved on campus. Well, I do have a split research and teaching appointment. So I teach 3 formal classes in my department, and then whenever students come to me with good ideas for group projects or independent study projects, I definitely I'll take those on as well. For about 18 years, I was the faculty advisor for the student subunit of the American Fisheries Society. And that group went from kind of this little core nucleus of 4 or 5 students who really wanted to get more involved with fisheries, both in terms of professional development, going to meetings, and research, to a much bigger organization now that has, at least for the last 10 years, run in publication quality research projects as group studies that sometimes span 3 or 4 years, where they just keep bringing in new students and then working their way sort of from, you know, the incoming freshmen to the graduating seniors, and they're actually mentoring each other as they go through this research process. I also get to serve as chair of our Animal Care and Use Committee, which is kind of an important committee that looks at and reviews any animal use on campus, or any vertebrate animal use on campus. And that's allowed me to get a much greater appreciation of just the breadth of research that is done here at CSU. I literally had no idea just how many different types of things people work on here on campus. And I know one of the other panelists has also been in this position and probably can speak some more to that. I am our college's representative for the Center for Undergraduate Research and Creativity, CERC. And that is an organization that runs a really big student research symposium, or research and art symposium, every year. Last year we had to switch over to a virtual format, but that still worked really well. So that's a great opportunity to showcase undergraduate research. And then I'm one of our college's members of the Graduate Center for Inclusive Mentoring as well. As far as, you know, how students can get connected with faculty, I think, you know, I'll essentially echo what Dr. Moreno and Dr. Laybourne said. You have to actually go talk to faculty. And I will readily admit that as an undergraduate, I would have, in most cases, been the last person to go to office hours or to actually seek out a faculty member. But once I finally figured out that you can knock on their doors and you can ask them questions, I realized that in most cases, they're sitting in their offices just hoping that someone comes in and asks them something about, well, in my case, about fish, or ask them about their research. If you're lucky, you might get out of their office 30 or 40 minutes later. If you show some interest in what they're doing, if you're genuinely interested in it, they will almost overwhelm you with the information that they can provide to you. Like Dr. Moreno said, we are often here because we like working with students. So actually having students come in and talk to us is a great thing. Most of the students who do end up working in my lab are students who have either taken one of my classes and have approached me, or approached one of my teaching assistants during the class, and we've had an opening in the lab. Or they're students who've been in that American Fisheries Society student subunit. Or I actually get a lot of honor students who are searching for research projects, and they'll essentially just wander down the hallways of our department, knocking on doors or seeing whose doors are open and asking questions. So you really have to take that first step. Once you take that first step, I think you'll find that a lot of doors do open for you. As far as getting involved with research on campus, again, I'm sort of echoing what's already been said. Talking to faculty, talking to graduate students, and not just walking in and saying, "Is there an opening in your lab?" But learning a bit more about what the lab does, maybe volunteering if they need to go out and do field work, which is something that a lot of faculty and students, at least in my area, do. And then remember that you can get research experience off of campus. It doesn't have to be on campus. So we have a lot of undergraduates in our program who end up working with either Colorado Parks and Wildlife or the National Park Service or the Forest Service or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So talking to faculty about some of the other opportunities within your field is probably something else that I would definitely recommend, because you don't have to limit yourself just to working on the CSU campus. You can actually go outside of campus and get lots of valuable experience that way. So I think that is pretty much it.
Thank you, Dr. Myrick. And now I invite Dr. Meyer to take the floor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mahesh Nair. I am a faculty in animal sciences. There are a lot of meetings where I can go and say, hey, I am a young faculty. When you're mid-35, you cannot call that yourself. But this is one of the places where I can call. I'm a young faculty here, been here only for 3 years. But my experience here so far has been amazing. Like, I love every little bit of it, like every bit of it. So when we first moved here, so let me start with a little bit with my background. Like, I didn't do my undergrad in US. I am originally from India, so I did my undergrad as a veterinarian, doing my veterinary medicine in India. But I did my master's and PhD at University of Kentucky, 2010 through 2017. I was at University of Kentucky. And then I started here in 2017. We moved here as a family. We had a little girl who was 1 year old at that time, 1.5 year old at that time. Not sure we were going to get settled here. But within the first 6 months, we made that decision. Yes, we absolutely love it here. We love Colorado, we love CSU, so we decided to settle down here. So much so that we bought a house within the first 6 months. One thing I really enjoyed working here at CSU is the opportunities for collaboration across the departments, not just within the department, but across the department. There are a lot of opportunities for people to work together and there are opportunities for you to put together grants, working on mentoring students, opportunities like that. Just for the sake of time, I'll move on to the next question about how connected you are to, how are you connected and involved on the campus. A lot of research going on campus, especially for 5-6 graduate students working in my lab as of now. And we have several undergraduate students that help with some of the projects that we have going on in the lab. Work together with several of the honors students coming through our program. And I have taken on some of the independent studies that has happened in the department. So that, like Dr. Moreno said earlier, all of us love working with the students and all of us love teaching. So otherwise we wouldn't be here. We would look for other opportunities. But that's one part of my job that I absolutely love. Every day interacting with the students, or whether it's a graduate student or an undergraduate student, interacting with them is one of the highlights of my day. One of the things that I look forward to when I come to my office. About getting involved on research and getting connected to faculty, I'll try to combine those two questions. Like, I echo everything that has been said earlier. Like, the first step is starting that conversation with someone. Like, if it's after the class, like sometimes I do a guest lecture for a 101 class and I get a question from someone, hey, I would like to get involved in your research. Something that you mentioned sparked a research interest in me. That is the best thing I can hear from that class. If I am able to do that, I consider that as a successful day in my career. So don't be shy or afraid to make that step forward, because we on the other side absolutely love, we are thrilled to hear that hey, someone is interested in what we are doing. Someone is actually wanting to be a part of something that we are doing. So the first step is always making that connection. And once you make that connection, it's easier for you to realize how many opportunities you can have. Like, you may not realize there are a lot of opportunities for us to getting involved in research on campus, but the faculty who you're working with, who you made that initial connection, will know at least 5 different opportunities for you. So once you have that conversation going, then things will get much easier. I think that's all I have. Like, I think I addressed all of the questions there.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. And I made a small shift. We're going to go through our remaining 2 faculty members so they have time and space to share. So I'll hand it off to Dr. Garrity.
Yeah, hello everyone. Glad to be here today. So one of the things I've always appreciated at being a faculty member at CSU is that, in fact, we are on a campus. And so most of the faculty here do have research labs and research students, and a whole half of their job is involved in doing research, but we also get that broader opportunity to teach and to interact with students. So for me, this has been a really good match, and I'm really glad that I chose this direction for my career. You have a lot of choices as a faculty member in terms of what direction you'd like to go. And one of the things I've gotten more and more interested in over time is how people learn. And so in part, this has been from working with the LIFE programs. LIFE 102 and 103 are taught in our department. And we started working with undergraduate students as learning assistants. And hello, Matthew. He was one of the very first learning assistants, or learning, yeah. Well, first LAs working with LIFE 102. So that's one way of making connections, is just getting involved in opportunities on campus for undergraduates, and then you meet people and you have more connections to explore. And let's see, so for students making connections, I would recommend talking to your professors or your graduate teaching assistants. You can also just flat out email us and just see what opportunities are available, because it varies from one lab to the next who has a spot each particular year. You might start out being a volunteer for that lab, but around the start of the spring semester, there are applications for merit work study, and you can put in that application and then you'll get a work study award that you could apply to your lab position. So in my lab, students typically work about 10 hours a week and they get paid for it through this work study award. There are other opportunities in research that center around the summer. So there are summer internships in various places, and I would recommend going to the Career Center to find out about some of those, or Googling like the RU opportunities that Dr. Laybourne was talking about are really wonderful opportunity if you have a chance to do that, especially if you're interested in maybe going into academics or graduate school in the long term. That's a really nice training to have. But there are many others. I just sent one to Nicolette by email that she can share with you. There are also faculty that have grants from the National Science Foundation that sometimes can have funds available for students to work in their lab over summer. So that's another possibility. And I think I'll stop there in the interest of time.
Thank you, Dr. Garrity. And now I pass it off to Dr. Engel.
Yeah, well, hello everybody. And I think, sorry, I was just teaching class, so I came in a little bit late, but I'm sure all this has been said, but you know, real quickly and in the essence of time here, I think I have the greatest job in the world. I'm much like Chris and Mahesh. Although Mahesh, I'm not sure, since we're in the same department, how I take your comments about, you know, the young faculty, because that makes me an old faculty member over here. I've been at CSU for 22 years now, I guess. And you know, probably the best way I could tell students to get involved is 2 ways that works for us really well, is interacting with the TAs for your classes, because I have Right now, I have 9 graduate students, and they're all TAing for classes. And so talk to them after class, or talk to me or any professor after class, and get involved. And just, if you ask a faculty member about their research, you're going to get an earful. I mean, you're going to get an earful. And so don't be afraid. You've heard that before in every one of these presentations, is don't be afraid to just ask the question, and step through that door when it cracks open. And you might like it, you might not, but you'll never know unless you step through it. And so we work with graduate students, and the faculty is probably one of the easiest, most direct ways to get involved in research. But you can also talk, at least in our department, we're set up with our academic success coordinators that know the faculty pretty well. And so they get to know the undergraduate students pretty well, and they can direct them to individual faculty members for research. And I did some math real quick, and I'll keep it short and brief here. We normally, I would say, run probably about 10 to 12 undergraduate students in our laboratory continuously. What number do you think that went up to due to the pandemic, or how do you think that influenced our interest from undergraduates? Right now, we currently have 54 students that are interested in what we're doing. The difference is kind of, and Chris mentioned this too in his comments. We have a laboratory. There's no way you can cram 54 students into a laboratory to do the analytical aspects of the research, but we're fortunate enough to have a research facility with animals, right? And so animals, cattle, sheep, goats, they need to be cared for every day. And so that's one avenue that students can actually, get out of the apartment or the dormitory and go hang out and help with animal feeding or animal husbandry type work. We have a lot of them, so there's plenty of work to do. It's not exciting work, but it is work that needs to be done if we're caring for animals. And one thing I will just recommend, and you've heard it and I'll say it again, is just step through that door and ask some questions. Don't be afraid. And I'll leave it at that so we can have some time for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Engel. Now I open it up to questions. Folks can either ask it verbally or through the chat.
If people have particular areas of biology or whatever subject you're interested in, if you let us know those, we can tell you who the most relevant people are in our departments. Yeah, I've been putting some of that in the chat. Also listed a couple of really cool short-term study abroad projects that are down in Honduras or Ecuador that I think sound fabulous, and I would love to go on myself.
I do have a little I think like one thing I struggle with sometimes is like sometimes it is like kind of intimidating to like talk to like faculty members, and especially like, people in your area of interest, because like I don't know, I mean, like, some faculty, like, they know so much, and you're just a beginner in your field. And I guess like one thing is, how do you, I mean, like, how could I like overcome like my fear sometimes of just like going up and just like talking to a faculty member about something, right? Because sometimes it can be like really intimidating to talk to faculty. You know what I mean? Sometimes.
I think one thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Garrity.
One thing I would say about that is that, we weren't born knowing this, and at one time in our lives, we knew exactly the same amount of information that we know right now. And so it's just because we've been around longer and have been studying this while. And I really don't think any of us want to make other people feel bad just because they're at an earlier stage in the career. So you can anticipate getting an understanding and, I think, hopefully warm response to any statements of interest.
Yes, the one thing I could add to that is, if you're just really, really uncomfortable meeting with a faculty member, you can always sort of take the the first step and talk to one of the graduate students. Because as I used to say when I was a graduate student, I essentially am an undergrad who never left. Now I say I'm a faculty member, which is a grad student who never left. But I think if you go up to a faculty member and just you show actual genuine interest, they will probably try to put you at ease. They may, like Terry said, swamp you with information just because we can't help ourselves. But we're not half as scary as we look. At least I don't think so.
I have a question. So my question is, what if a student were to go up to a faculty member with a research idea for themselves, but it's not something necessarily that the lab is currently working on? How would a student be able to maybe talk to a professor about their idea and then maybe develop like a plan to begin research on their specific topic, or is that something not really seen usually?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it somewhat depends on what the idea is. So for example, if you have a particular idea and you can find a faculty member who studies something pretty close to that, they might be willing to take you on to do an independent research project or something like that. Or if they aren't willing to do that, they might be able to recommend other opportunities where you could kind of put that into action. One of the possible limiting factors here is that sometimes it costs some money to buy the reagents and things like that. So some people might have that available and others not, but that would be another avenue to explore, is where could you get, a small pot of money to support your research.
I'll just make a quick comment on that. I'm pretty dysfunctional, and so is our laboratory. So that's I'm all about weird research. And if you come up over to the animal science department, we deal with cattle and sheep, pigs, and horses and whatever. And I had a really great undergraduate student that wanted to investigate the antibiotic properties of hippo sweat. And I don't know anything about hippos. I do know that they're not very nice. And so I helped her write a little grant. She got $500 for it. We interacted with the Denver Zoo. We rigged up a way working with the zookeepers to take hippo sweat. Nobody died in the whole process. And so, we have a poster upstairs where she presented that, and there was it was a great idea. And so, we have all kinds of little projects like that if you have an idea, let's try it. Now, it might be over the budget, right? For sure, budget, you can't donate, $100,000 to a project like that without some financial support. But where there's a will, there's a way, I think. And we've done all kinds of weird stuff over here, with hippos to elephant sperm to even fish, Myrick, even fish.
All right, thank you.
Any last minute questions before we wrap up?
One thing I was going to add on just an advantage if you were to contact someone about working in their lab, when I have undergrads that come to me and they also have like merit work study or need-based work study, that's really helpful for me to be able, because I like to pay my students in the lab. So that's a way also that I'm like, oh, okay, if 70% of your pay is going to be paid for, that really helps too. So I think every year you can apply for merit. I don't know if you can do it every year, but at least once while you're here, you can get merit work study. And that's another good avenue to get someone's interest in you, is that you'd be able to work paid for.
Thank you, Dr. Moreno. And I invite any other faculty members as well if they have any last minute tidbits they would like to add.
As it happens, I was just talking with folks from Study Abroad recently, and they really helped me realize that there's tons and tons of programs out there for our undergraduates to go all over the world and study abroad, and that the cost is not necessarily prohibitive. So it might be the same amount as a semester here at CSU. So if that's anything that you have an opportunity to do, I think it could be a life-changing experience and just super fun. So check that out.
Thank you, Dr. Garrity. With that, I would like to thank all of our panelists and just everybody who's in the space today. It was a really great experience and great discussions and information, so I appreciate everybody's time and energy. For our students, I did post the post-evaluation and assessments, whether you're in STEM Arrive, STEM Thrive, or Thrive, so please fill that out when you get some time today. But thank you again, and please have a good rest of your day and week.
Oh, thanks for the invite.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
having us.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thanks for all the advice. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for your questions.
Yeah, thank you.